Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, everybody, welcome back. I am joined by the one and only Annie Baker Atwood from a place in Maine, but it doesn't really matter because she can help anybody virtually and remotely. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right. Well, it's nice to have you. Can you, in case the listeners haven't seen or heard your program before, can you tell us a little bit about Red Boots Reiki, which is your company, and a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm a Reiki master, and what I do is I recharge your energy cells, and they kind of look like that little battery icon on your phone that you freak out if it hits 20% and you freak out more if it hits 16%. And what I do is I recharge that, and similar to hitting a road trip with a full tank of gas, you feel more confident and you sleep better if you're fully charged. And I can help you with that goal.
Awesome. Now you got a great topic for us today, but before we get there, I kind of just want to give the audience just a little insight into what a Reiki master does. I mean, there are 7 chakras, if I'm correct, and
Yeah, there's more, but we focus on the 7.
okay, I see. Now, who's a good candidate to come in and get Reiki work from you that you can help?
Everybody, including your animals. I Reiki my cat just about every day.
Nice.
And when I need to do a road trip with the dogs, yes, they get that little magic pill, but I also Reiki them. If you are an athlete going into your season, I can help because we all know that if you are a tennis player and you blow a shot, it messes with your head. Or if you're a sailor and you miss the shift, it messes with your head. And I have a less than 30-second protocol that you can do to snap you back into flow so you can perform at your peak. Um, I also work with athletes of all ages where, you know, I think every runner in their 50s has, maybe some little thing going on with their knee or their ankle. Tennis players and golfers, they get it in their elbow, their shoulders. I can help.
Awesome. And I heard of something that they call, if you're doing it virtually, and you're a master, so you do it
Yes.
virtually. I heard that they use something called a proxy, or you guys use something called a proxy, which can you explain what that is and who this what Mr.
Yeah.
Bear is?
So this is USA Bear. My daughter went to Olympic trials for sailing last time around. She recently decided not to continue, but this was her little bear that she got when she was 7. So we've used Mr. USA Bear. So what happens in a remote session is I basically take your owner's manual out of your car, right? And I bring it to read on my own in my own space. And um, which I can do without you even being there. But if you are on screen with me, it helps you to see kind of where I'm focusing the recharge of the energy cells. But honestly, you don't even need to be on screen with me for me to have an effect to recharge you.
Mhm.
But most people like it because I'm fun to hang out with.
Hey, and what happens? Like, say we're in a session. I'm laying down, right, and you have the bear, and say you're feeling something in like a shoulder or something like that. What happens to you? What happens? Something happened to your hands? You get hot. What happens?
It almost feels like I'm resting my hand on a hairbrush, or it's just like multiple points
Oh, okay.
of contact. Um, when my youngest was 4, we happened to be at some very fancy hotel, and they had that koi pond,
Oh, okay.
and he was wearing all orange. I'll never forget this. And so he went over to the side of the koi pond, and all of a sudden, all of the fish went over, and they're like, and so that's what happens to your energy cells. They realize that, oh, this is a great person to charge up with. I'm just going to rise to the surface and get my needs met.
Wow.
And when I'm like my hands hover, I never actually touch anybody unless I'm trying to get your shoulder. And sometimes I have to scoop my hand under so that I can sandwich you.
Uh-huh.
But people don't typically mind because you were always dressed during a session.
Right.
So some people are like, yeah, I don't care at all. I had one of my clients who had just gone through a lot of breast surgery for cancer, and we were trying to reintegrate a lot of her nerve endings from all of the glands. And she's like, listen, I have no issues. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
And so I was able to really get in a little closer. But that would never happen on a first go round. That would happen if you were really working on a very specific um, physical manifestation of something that wasn't in alignment.
Okay. All right.
So I'm not going to go digging into your armpits day one.
Okay. All
Not
right.
going to do
Fair
that.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
But
no need for that.
just on a side note, I got to know because I know that you taught us the Reiki masters teach that there's a color is maybe I'm wrong, but is there a color associated with the with a different chakra or a different area?
Yeah,
Is that
there
true?
is. I don't pay much attention to that.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I was just going to ask about the orange with the koi. That's fine.
yeah. So that would be more of the root chakra. So the koi felt very comfortable with him
Uh-huh.
as a source of regenerating them. I think the funniest statement in my Reiki manual is if you are performing Reiki on a fish, leave it in the tank. I'm like,
Doesn't say that. No
duly
way.
noted, duly noted. I can do that.
That is great. Oh wow.
I honestly have yet to Reiki a fish.
And the fish is better for it. So you're
Right.
helping all animals, right? I heard animals love it. I heard that they cut they if they see it being done, they're on you.
They, well, the thing about Reiki, it's really interesting. So I'm kind of like a Wi-Fi um, hotspot.
Okay.
And so if you are attuned to Reiki, you're going to naturally um, be able to energize and recharge from my emitting or whatever, however that works. I don't know. I'm not really technologically,
You're like the conduit from the energy,
yeah, I
right?
can just put it out there. So one of the things that is really, really fun is what I call immersion Reiki. And so friends of mine will come for a weekend, and they don't even have to be believers in Reiki. And they just say, oh my gosh, I feel calmer. I feel energized. And, it's a great house in Maine. And they stay for a couple of days, maybe more. And they just soothe and resolve a lot without me
Oh, this
having a
not
session
even
with
without
them.
it. This is without a session. This is just
Yeah.
being in the
Yeah.
energy.
And so that's kind of the Wi Fi thing. They
Okay.
just are able to tap in to recharging.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, you have an amazing topic today, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. You brought up about the difference between what is a trigger and what is a gut reaction to danger or something like that. Please let me just hand it over to you because I'm just going to be listening intently on this because I love this subject.
Yeah. So this is a good one because I have a little self Reiki method for both of them. But I get asked a lot, what do I do about toxic people in my life? And I'm like, yeah, they happen. They totally exist. And so there's a couple ways you can react. And if it's a trigger, it usually means that they are overstimulating, where's my hand? A system. And the best way I can describe this is when I was in New Haven, I loved the church that I went to, and we would have coffee hour. And so I'm setting up for coffee hour, and they had this beautiful, island with all the plugs. And so I plugged in, every Episcopalian lives on coffee as well as, wine. The regular coffee, decaf coffee, and, the hot water for tea.
Right.
I was new. So one of the church elders comes, hustling over, in her little suit. She was so cute. She's like, "Oh, we don't do that here." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. How can I fix this?" She said, "You need to put one of the machines back in the kitchen." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "What happens if you don't?" She said, "Oh, we blow the system, right? And then you have to go find that little box and do click, 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 and get yourself back online." And I thought, "Oh, okay." And apparently everybody knew this but me, because I was new.
Right.
So I had, in fact, triggered an overload into an electrical system, not because I was doing it on purpose. I just didn't know how much this little island could take. Now, that little island had been there, I don't know, probably 20 years when they redid it. And it was way easier to put the hot water in the back of the kitchen, which was a different circuit breaker, than to rewire. And so you need to think about that for yourself. We do a lot of mitigating and circumventing, triggering, or overloading our personal systems, whichever chakra that jumps into. Okay. So it might be your heart chakra, and you might be hearing something that's hurtful to hear because it's bringing up a past experience that you really, really, really don't want to address right now. And physically, what happens is they call it flooding. And basically, and I've had this happen a lot, which is why I can speak about it. And it happens, right? You just kind of become this noodle of emotions, and you can't regulate because you are triggered. Something overloaded your system. And it rarely is the intent of the person who said something to have that go on. It's just you're wired to accommodate, coffee and decaf, but you cannot accommodate, the hot water for anything else, for tea. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, you're not really yourself. You really are feeling vulnerable. You're feeling shaky. You're feeling almost tunnel vision, and you want that person to just stop. You just want them to stop talking to you. and you'll say that, and they're like, "But you're not understanding my system. I want to plug in my coffee maker." And you're like, "Can you just stop?" And the person who just wants to have that, hot water doesn't understand that you don't have the bandwidth to absorb what they're saying. It doesn't even matter what they're saying. What they're saying, they want to prove their point that what they're saying isn't toxic or poisonous. And I'll go into those two in a sec. And so they keep trying to plug it in, and your circuit breaker keeps flipping to overload. And you get into this physically uncomfortable situation between the two of you. And then you don't even want to be near that person. Okay. So
even if it seemed innocent in the beginning.
And there was no ill intent.
Right.
Or I don't know if that's the right word, but they weren't, and often don't know that whatever they said is a trigger.
Okay.
They just made a comment, and all of a sudden they're like faced with this person like hiding under the pillows on a couch going, stop that, please stop. And they're like, oh, whoopsies. So, and it's really confusing for everybody, and you can't even address the other person because you've just had your circuit breaker turned on and off a gazillion times.
Great example.
And everything comes tunnel vision, and your senses are completely deadened. They're not working. Okay. When you get into a situation that's a gut reaction, the opposite happens. Your senses are heightened. Everything almost slows down. And I'm going to use an example, and I hadn't thought of this till I was making notes. Years and years and years ago, I got my driver's license, and I grew up in New England. And I was driving from Cambridge, Mass, up to Hanover, New Hampshire to visit my sister. And it was a very, very heavy Saab 900. Those things were tanks. Good old, manual transmission. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a lot of experience. And so I was getting off the highway onto the off ramp, which as an adult, freezes first. That's why you have to slow down. Well, I didn't know that. I'm like, woohoo, let's zoom this thingy. Because I had learned to drive in the summer. And so this was my first winter of driving.
Okay.
I felt the car, lose traction. Every single sense in my body slowed down. And I could see everything play out slow motion. And I'm like, okay. And I mean, you're taught, point the car the way you want it to go. I'm like, all right, I know that where I'm going to end up is off the road, but there's no other cars around. I'm going to be fine. But it's a gut reaction when you're about to crash a car.
Oh, God, yeah.
Or any other kind of heightened danger. Everything slows down. I mean, all these years later, I can picture and feel the exact imprint of how it felt to be faced with an external danger. So this wasn't a triggering thing for me. This was, an honest mistake of a 17-year-old who was an inexperienced driver. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just learning. And I ended up like off the road in the middle of that little area. And, a nice Mr. Man came and he was like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I just misinterpreted that turn and I was going too fast. And he was like, yeah, you're never going to make that mistake again. And so sometimes the gut reactions one of the differences is you don't make that mistake again.
Mm.
A trigger, you make that mistake a lot of times until you can recognize, oh, this is a trigger. I can change that pattern because actions are a habit and you can always change a habit. If it's a gut reaction to a situation, you're following your intuition and you're following what's happening, and it's very different. And I want to say that I have never met anybody who hasn't said, I followed my intuition and I got myself out of, or I avoided a situation. So if you have this really strong feeling in your gut that this is not right, please, please, please honor that and don't go there. Whereas if it's in your head, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that, it's probably a trigger. And that takes a different way because a trigger probably has something going on from a while ago, and you can undo it. You can totally undo it, but it's different than this just doesn't feel right.
Right.
And so the two things, if you are in your trigger, I think I mentioned like, burrowing into the corner of a couch.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in your trigger, and if you can, anybody, if you can remember this one thing, what I want you to do is what we call the face cradle. I kind of have to move this for a second.
Okay.
You're going to put your middle two fingers on your temples and then bring your hands down around under your chin. It's a very grounding, comforting position. It's very grounding and comforting. And that's going to remind you that this is something you can resolve. All this is a little highlight that says, yeah, let's disentangle this and let it go now. It's like coming across, I don't know if people even have jewelry drawers anymore, but coming across that necklace that is like all tangled up.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think everybody has one of those.
Yeah.
This is the opportunity to take the time and untangle it and say, okay, yeah, that's coming from a long time ago, and I don't need to do that anymore.
Great. Yeah.
If or after you get out of one of those gut situations, and especially if it was like a physical danger, like slow motion car accident, there's two things that I need you to do. When you have that spike of adrenaline, it sits in your adrenal glands, which are in your back. So I know you don't wear a bra, but it's right underneath your bra strap. So kind of in between your hip bones and your shoulder bones. I want you to take your non-dominant hand. This is important. Your non-dominant hand, and just put the palm of your hand over that area in the back. Mm-hmm. And then take your dominant hand and put it on the tummy so it's like a sandwich. And breathe 7 times. 7 is a magic number when it comes to breathing. And what this is going to do is it's going to clear the adrenaline out of your adrenal glands, clear that frantic energy.
Wow.
So you do that first.
Okay.
And I mean, you can always text me and I can clear it for you very easily. After you clear it from your adrenal glands so that it's not sticking to you like a Band-Aid, then you're going to take the palms of your hand and you're going to go onto this, your same temples, and you're going to bring the fingers to I don't know if you can still me the top of your head where a baby would have the soft spot. So it's not in the front; it's kind of in the middle back. So exactly where your headphones would go over.
Okay.
And that set of energy is going to re-regulate you so that you're out of fight, flight, freeze, and there's one more that I can never remember. And so you can unlock that and be able to just say, wow.
Wow.
That was powerful that happened.
Those are great tips. Annie Baker Atwood. Annie, please tell people how to get a hold of you, and any last thoughts you want to leave us with, because we went over.
I know we're out of time. So you can contact me on redbootsreiki.com. There's a little button that says find me or whatever, communicate with me. And you can also follow me on YouTube, which is Red Boots Reiki with Annie Baker Atwood. And I do a Reiki to the rescue every week to just, and it's between a minute and a minute 15 seconds. And it's just the same kinds of, if you're here, do this. If this happens, do this. And subscribe so you never miss anything.
Cool. Very that's awesome. So guys, go to the website, which is Red Boots, plural, Reiki.com. redbootsreiki.com. And my special thanks to Annie Baker Atwood. What a great show, great tips, and I'll be definitely thinking of those. Thank you so much, and can't wait.
Thank you.
To say next. Be right back, guys.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.